Story 1. The woman who was burned by a McDonald's coffee became a household joke about frivolous lawsuits. Story 2. Jeffrey and Michael Derderian were the brothers who owned Rhode Island's Station nightclub at the time of the 2003 fire that left 100 people dead. The nightclub was not crowded beyond legal capacity and complied with all fire safety rules. The brothers did not know that the band Great White would be using pyrotechnics in their show, and they believed the sound-insulating foam on the walls was non-flammable. A supplier had mistakenly sent them highly flammable foam that was visually identical to the correct type. Story 3. Marie Antoinette was married and made queen before she turned 20. She entered a loveless marriage, was the second youngest of 16 children, and lacked diplomatic experience. She was married to avoid war with France and had no friends. I don't know about you, but if I were in her position, I would also spend the national budget on expensive clothes and luxuries. She had little idea what she was doing. Story 4. Sinead O'Connor, rest in peace. Fuck the Catholic Church for real. Story 5. In this essay, I will explain why Hitler. I am kidding. Fuck that guy. Story 6. Dr. Kevorkian seemed like a kind person with sincere intentions. Story 7. Howard Phillips Lovecraft. Nowadays, whenever Lovecraft is mentioned, at least on the internet, many people jump in to remind everyone what his cat's name was. He was undeniably racist, and no amount of personal trauma can excuse that. He was a sheltered, sickly, terrified, depressed man. Both of his parents died in mental institutions, and he was constantly either physically or mentally unwell, often falling into deep depressions and withdrawing. Despite all that, once he began traveling and broadening his social circle, his bigotry greatly lessened. He started out as a pro-monarchy Tory who disliked anyone who did not try to assimilate into Western culture, and he died as a socialist who supported all ethnicities preserving their cultures. He even spoke very negatively about his earlier beliefs and prejudices as he got older. He was far from perfect, but he was improving. You know how some people start out kind but become more hateful as they age, to the point that part of you wishes they had died years earlier before ruining their legacy? Lovecraft is the opposite. He began very hateful, but as he grew older he became more tolerant. I wish he had lived long enough to continue that change. Also, he had the cat when he was a child. He probably did not even name it, and even if he did, he was just a kid. You are not even your own person at that age. Besides, would you want to be remembered primarily for a foolish thing you did as a child? Story 8. People with behavioral or social issues often have reasons for their behavior that fall outside the norm, and it is typically not their fault. Many have been dealt difficult hands, and we do not know what they have experienced. Everyone should practice more empathy. Story 9. I feel that Dr. Kevorkian is remembered as a villain, but maybe that is just my perception. I believe he was genuinely trying to reduce suffering and help people. Story 10. People with substance use disorders are individuals with mental health conditions who use drugs as a coping mechanism. If you were in their situation and experienced the effects of those drugs, you might respond similarly. Story 11. Angelina Jolie devotes her life to her family and to charity work. She left Brad Pitt after alleging he physically assaulted her and their son. However, she has been blamed for alienating her children from their father. Story 12. Paris Hilton went through traumatic experiences in the troubled teen industry. She is a strong advocate for the victims of those schools. I have nothing but respect for her. Story 13. Medusa was a beautiful young woman who went to the temple of Athena. Poseidon assaulted her there. Athena, angry that the assault took place in her temple, blamed the victim and transformed Medusa into a hideous monster. Later, Medusa's two sisters were turned into Gorgons for speaking out about her mistreatment. Shunned by gods and mortals alike, they retreated to live in a remote cave. Perseus rose to mythic fame when he waited until all three sisters were asleep and then beheaded them. Perseus, not Heracles, was the one instructed to kill the Gorgons. Story 14. Homeless and impoverished individuals, especially those who also struggle with mental illness. Story 15. People with crippling social anxiety are still going out there and trying their best. Story 16. People with undiagnosed or diagnosed mental disorders, especially those that affect personality and well-being, such as autism, deserve understanding. I wish everyone would learn about the traits and be kind. Embarrassing interests are okay. It is not the end of the world. If someone seems odd for wearing headphones all the time, wears clothing with characters they like, speaks slightly differently, or becomes overwhelmed and shuts down in public, stop being so judgmental. Crying or getting upset in public is not necessarily attention-seeking. People are often cruel to things they do not understand. If an adult carries a plush animal because it helps with anxiety, shame on those who mock them for finding something that helps and does not harm anyone else. Piling on and telling them never to go outside only causes more harm. Story 17. Doctors. No, there is not a global conspiracy to harm people. Outside of certain countries, we are not paid enough for wholesale cruelty to be worth considering. While there is job security, most of us practice medicine because we want to help people. I will not be paid more if you follow my advice. I cannot force you to do anything to improve your health or the health of your children. I can report you if I think there are mental competence and safety issues, but even involuntary psychiatric treatment can only be used to provide enough care to restore mental competence to make decisions about non-psychiatric health conditions. It cannot be used to force, for example, someone to receive cancer treatment. If we can restore mental stability and the person still refuses treatment, we must respect that decision. I had a case that went through multiple hearings, medical legal consultations, and a high court hearing about a periodically psychotic patient with treatable kidney cancer who would die without treatment but declined cancer treatment during psychotic episodes. We do not stop being human when we qualify. Even with medical school, examinations, and specialty training, we will still make mistakes. We will sometimes misdiagnose because human bodies do not follow anatomy and physiology textbooks. We might hear hooves and assume horses are the most likely cause while considering cattle as possible, when the hooves actually belong to bison, even in Bournemouth. Catastrophic mistakes are rarely the fault of a single individual. Usually a series of errors adds up to a tragedy when multiple system checks in the hospital fail. When cases are publicized, the media, medical regulators, and sometimes the hospital try to find a scapegoat, when in fact many people or the organization should be held accountable. This has resulted in unjust dismissals, loss of license, and even suicide by the accused because of the stress of investigation and lack of support. When we give medical prognosis, we do so to give patients and their loved ones a time frame to get their affairs in order and consider estate planning. We are not placing an expiry date on a person. Unless we actively kill someone, we are providing a probability based on statistical data from hundreds, thousands, or more cases with the same condition. There will be outliers who die earlier and others who live much longer. Living beyond a prognosis is often reported as patients defying doctors, as if we do not want the best outcomes. If we predicted you had 1 year and you make it to 4, we are happy you are still alive. You will be added to audit data, but one additional survivor will not dramatically change prognosis for future patients unless many people live long enough to shift the statistics. I had one patient who lived 14 years with prostate cancer that had metastasized to his bones. His bone scans were terrifying, but he lived a long time. He was a significant outlier, and most patients in the same condition have about 18 months to 2 years. It would be negligent of me to give other patients that level of false hope. Summary. Most doctors want to help you. We are not the enemy. Some clinicians have poor bedside manner, but even they generally want to fix you, sometimes to bolster their own egos. We also make mistakes because we are human. Story 18. Joseph Robinette Biden. He oversaw an almost miraculous economic recovery from coronavirus disease 2019, guiding the country down from a dangerous global inflation spike while reducing unemployment, raising low-income wages, and reducing inequality, an outcome many economists thought impossible. He competently managed distribution of hundreds of millions of vaccine doses, allowing the country to reopen. He also ended the drone campaign and the United States' longest-running war in Afghanistan, with few American casualties. However, he is so old that he can barely communicate in public. Few people understand this, and they blame him for problems he helped solve. The coronavirus disease 2019 lockdowns, inflation, and the Afghan quagmire. That could mean that next time there is a hint of inflation, policymakers will favor austerity, mass unemployment, and widespread hardship. Story 19. Vegans. There are some asshole vegans, but for the most part vegans try to live a life that aligns with their morals, and many people take offense because of their own issues. Story 20. People with anxiety can behave differently in social situations. My best friend talks excessively in certain settings that make her anxious. As a result, some people lose patience with her or say mean or hateful things, either to her face or behind her back. I stand up for her if she is directly insulted because it is unnecessary to be so hostile over a social faux pas. Anxiety is painful, and I feel bad for those who suffer from it. Many people are not understanding or aware of why someone with anxiety acts the way they do, whether they are very quiet, talk excessively, or seem a bit off. It is easy to judge until you have experienced it firsthand. Story 21. I might get downvoted to oblivion, but Michael Jackson. I think he was psychologically damaged beyond repair and stunted by his childhood. His coping mechanisms led to awful judgments that well-adjusted people may not be able to comprehend. I also think that, especially in the wake of the Me Too movement, if he were truly a prolific pedophile, there would be hundreds of victims, not just two. Story 22. The people the United States goes to war with are portrayed as villains, so the public feels justified in killing them. Story 23. Insurance, stupendous, unique, tender, jellyfish, serious, languid, axiomatic, attempt, offbeat. Story 24. Aileen Wuornos was a serial killer of men, but when you look at her life, it is tragic. Nothing good happened to her. She was abused and raped repeatedly before she snapped. When she was arrested, she asked to be put to death and did not contest any charges. Devastating life, in my opinion. Story 25. Receipt checkers are doing what their boss told them to do, and people, especially online, blow a gasket when asked to show their receipt. One time I was at a self-checkout and my manager told me to check a woman who had a large, expensive baby car seat. I asked for her receipt, and she started accusing me of being racist because she is black, despite the fact that my manager and I are black. She began ranting and raving. I did not know whether she had paid for it, and frankly I did not care. We are not checking receipts because we care whether you stole something. We are doing it because our managers told us to. So calm down. Story 26. Michael Cimino. He is often credited with killing the new Hollywood that brought filmmakers like Scorsese, Coppola, Lucas, Spielberg, and De Palma, among others. This is because of the troubled production of his film Heaven's Gate. His career more or less fell apart after it flopped epically upon release. In reality, Star Wars and Jaws had already begun to push studios and producers away from auteur-driven films toward more producer-driven ones, and the depressing, gritty films of the new Hollywood had been losing steam for years. Heaven's Gate is solely guilty of bad timing. Story 27. Most spree shooters are misunderstood, not in the sense that we should feel sorry for them, but in that we need a better understanding of why they act as they do so society can address the problem. Story 28. As a group, criminals run the gamut from the truly despicable who should be locked away to the truly unlucky who probably should never have been arrested, and everything in between. The second you have that scarlet C on you, everything from work to relationships becomes exponentially harder. We treat them like untouchables, give them little help, and then wonder why so many do not successfully reintegrate into society. Story 29. Transgender people are just trying to live their lives. Story 30. People laugh at Sigmund Freud a lot. Do not get me wrong. In hindsight, much of what he proposed was questionable and he used a lot of cocaine. Still, he deserves more respect than he gets from modern psychology students and laypeople. His theories were no more inaccurate than the plum-pudding model of the atom, and people do not laugh at J. Thomson. He even received a Nobel Prize. His model was eventually superseded, but his contributions were an important step. The same is true for Freud, and arguably more so. Freud was the founder of much of modern psychology. He was the first to seriously consider unconscious forces behind decision-making and behavior. Today, the idea of a subconscious seems obvious, but in his time it was revolutionary. Mental illness as a concept was barely considered, and all action and behavior were believed to be conscious. Freud was also the first to examine and treat mental conditions through talk alone. He essentially invented modern therapy. Although techniques have changed, modern therapy remains fundamentally based on his method. Just as a modern nuclear reactor traces back to James Watt's steam engine, without Ada Lovelace there would be no iPhone, and without Freud there would be no cognitive behavioral therapy, a practice that has demonstrably improved the lives of millions. Story 31. Emperor Nero was likely a bit dramatic and full of himself, but he did not play the fiddle as Rome burned. He was not in Rome when the fire began. As soon as he heard the news, he returned to coordinate rebuilding efforts. Overall, he was a decent leader who was popular among the people. It was the elites who disliked him and slandered his name after his death. Story 32. Judas Iscariot. Jesus was the scapegoat for humanity. By his sacrifice, we are all saved if you believe that. Judas was a necessary part of that process. He was not the only disciple to deny him that weekend. Story 33. Some people called Karens are entitled and prejudiced and desperate for attention. Many of them have legitimate concerns that get belittled because of their age, gender, or ethnicity. That is pretty sexist. I thought we were trying not to do that anymore. Story 34. Amber Heard. To elaborate, Johnny Depp was found by a United Kingdom court to have assaulted Amber Heard on 12 of 14 alleged occasions. Amber Heard wrote an opinion piece describing herself as a public figure who had experienced domestic violence. The piece did not name Johnny Depp. He sued over alleged loss of earnings related to that article. The full United Kingdom judgment and trial transcript are publicly available. The judgment discusses the injury to Depp's finger and concludes that Amber Heard was not responsible. The United Kingdom trial transcript, Day 2, includes the relevant exchange on page 259. Depp admitted to sending a text to Stephen Deuters on page 258. The presiding judge, Mr. Justice Nicol, summarized these matters in his judgment from paragraph 477 onward. The article at issue was published in the Washington Post. Forbes reported on an anti-Amber Heard social media campaign and alleged manipulation of videos. Reports have also compiled alleged instances in which Johnny Depp contradicted his United Kingdom testimony during the United States trial. Story 35. Axl Rose was sexually abused by his stepfather as a child while living in Indiana. He eventually hitchhiked to Los Angeles, wrote remarkable songs, and became extremely successful very quickly, moving from clubs to stadiums and headlining festivals within a few years. He had temper tantrums and engaged in disparaging talk. And during that time, a therapist helped bring many suppressed childhood memories to light. Since reuniting with Slash in 2016, he has not caused shows to start late or incited riots. He appears to be in good spirits, and many describe him as pleasant. Yet many social media posts criticize him for issues from the 1990s that nearly no one was personally affected by. He is not a saint, but he does not deserve to be harassed over events that occurred more than 30 years ago. Story 36. J. K. Rowling was completely radicalized by the response of the progressive Twitter crowd. She is off the deep end now, but she was treated the same when she made very mild statements and tried to fight for a better world and greater equality as she saw it. Every effort she made to fix previous oversights or to accommodate the changing zeitgeist was met with ridicule, personal attacks, and typical Twitter vitriol. The real question is anyone really surprised by where she ended up? That is what happens when you take potential allies and cast them out for not being perfect instead of welcoming them. She could have been a very influential and powerful ally. She wanted to be. Unfortunately, you all were more interested in blasting her for the slightest perceived offenses and in showing how much better you thought you were. Well, here we are. Story 37. Anita Sarkeesian made a bunch of videos about tropes in video games she did not like. Gamers, trademark, got so angry that they spent a decade trying to portray her as the devil himself. Edit. Thank you to everyone who commented on this post for proving my point. Story 38. There are many police body camera clips online. Especially in some sovereign citizen or similar cases, it is quite possible that a lot of mental illness is involved. There are many articulate, well-put-together people who have mental illness and are simply not in the same reality as you and I. Many of these mental illnesses respond very well to treatment, but it is unlikely that someone in that situation will agree they have an illness or agree to be treated. I am not suggesting they should be driving or that illegal behavior is acceptable. I am saying that before vilifying the people in the videos, it is worth considering whether some of them are simply not able to do any better. Story 39. I'm going to say police officers. And yes, before anyone objects, I know there are disgusting, deplorable, and downright evil police officers who use the job to terrorize innocent civilians or go on power trips. I get that. It's horrible and they deserve to be put in prison. I'm talking about those who are just doing their jobs and doing their best to keep the public safe. Think about it. Police officers have to deal with drunk drivers either before they hurt someone or, worse, after they crash and injure someone. They must go to places of danger and horror. They do not have a choice because they chose a job that puts them on the literal front lines of public danger. That also means their ability to come home to their families is uncertain. They cannot run away or hide. They have a job to handle dangerous situations as best they can and hope to come out unscathed, or at least alive, to see their loved ones. They also have to deal with people who call for no reason, handle domestic abusers, and sometimes face the most depressing and traumatizing situations many people cannot handle even once in their lives, such as attempts to resuscitate an apparently lifeless person, including children. My grandpa, who was a police officer, had to perform resuscitation on an infant, left outside in the cold rain in a dumpster until he was told to stop. Sometimes the children who survive are severely abused or sexually abused. For children with loving parents, he had to distract them while paramedics tried to keep their mother alive after a heart attack or a brain aneurysm behind the wheel, or while she had been trying to tuck them into bed. I have many more stories from my grandpa's experience, but these are the main reasons I respect people who choose such a thankless field of work that does not guarantee they will come out alive. Story 40. I do not know if I would describe her as despised, but I see a lot of strange hatred for Ariana Grande on social media and I do not know why. I am not a big Ariana Grande fan and her music does not do much for me. However, people call her vain and egotistical, which confuses me because everything I have seen does not give that impression. I have a lot of respect for Ariana Grande because of the way she responded to the horrific Manchester Arena bombing. Most celebrities would have made it about themselves and talked about how it affected them without mentioning the other victims. She did not. She focused on her fans who had come to see her perform, some of whom suffered life-changing injuries. I think it was wonderful that she organized a benefit concert on television to raise money for the victims. It was a generous thing to do, and I doubt many celebrities would have made that effort. Story 41. Republican voters are not all evil, but many have been convinced that Republicans will help them and that Democrats want to destroy the country. I have known many good people who care for their families and help their neighbors. Sadly, they have been misled by a billion-dollar machine designed to scare them into voting against their own interests. Story 42. Yoko Ono was just the most convenient scapegoat for the media and had to endure betrayals and smear campaigns from the people she trusted after John's death. Sure, the avant-garde singing was a bit much, but being cringe isn't a crime. Story 43. Elizabeth Bathory. There is no evidence that she bathed in blood or murdered innocent young women. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.